Mary Beaver served in the U.S. Army. Her father and grandfather and great grand uncle all served in the U.S. Army, and her great grand uncle was General Walter Bedell Smith. She was recruited into the U.S. Army because of her precocious abilities, including the ability to be able to read Phoenician. She got very high security clearances, and she was also ghosted at the end of her military service, but has succeeded nevertheless in getting papers proving that she did serve in the US Army. And so she's here today to talk about some of the latest information she has, including on Space Arks.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome, Mary, to the show.
Well, thank you, Dr. Salla. I'm glad to be on your show again. It's been a long time. I'm excited.
Yes, it has been several years now. So for people who don't remember our first interview, why don't you just kind of give a thumbnail sketch of your family background in the Army and how that led to you being recognized as someone with special abilities?
So I do come from the Masonic Illuminati families genetically. So unlike other people, we weren't like kidnapped or anything. We were just kind of handed over to the deep space programs, and we have a very intense background in military. So I've gained access to a lot of my ancestral background, and it goes back to a lot of warring gods like Ra and stuff like that. Anybody that was here to fight and take over. So genetically, we're pretty much all militarized for the most part. And myself, I've been genetically altered, I would say, in some of those programs. But it's been interesting. I didn't know that my father or my great uncle, General Smith, was a majestic until I got to a certain point in my career. But it opened interesting doors. And here I am today, kind of able to talk about it. But that's been it's kind of been a thing. I wasn't able to talk about it at first. I'm not saying I didn't get attacked, because I did a lot. And the last attack was in 2019, and that actually went public. So in my area, it was open court and everything. So it was another militarized individual. We both survived it. And he went to prison for 9.5 years. So it has not been easy, but the world is changing, and I think everybody's ready for the truth now, whether the bad guys are or not. So it's been a little bit more relaxed on certain things we could talk about, and bringing up certain programs like when I was in the military. Those are now no longer secret, if that makes sense.
So can you tell us about the Phoenician language and how you were able to understand it, read it, speak it, and how that was something that led to you being recruited and got the attention of people in the military intelligence community?
So when we do our application, obviously you go to the recruiter's office and it asks you if you can speak any other languages. So at the time, I had studied Cherokee and Chickasaw as an adult, from 14 to an adult. But learning Phoenician, I think it was something that was just embedded in my DNA, because I was in 6th grade when we had a history book that had the different ancient languages. It had Sumerian and some other ones that I don't think they have in history books anymore. And something drew me to the Phoenician, and I was like, oh, that looks familiar. So I went and I wrote it down, because we could take our books home. And so I started to study it. And again, we had DOS back then, so it's not like we had anything to look this up. It all had to come from physical books. So it just kind of came to me naturally after seeing it. So I think I had pivotal points of my waking up experience, but as I've said before in past interviews, I wasn't fully like mind blank like other people, because there was an anticipation of me being taken over later by a namesake inheritance through the Eastern Star thing, but that didn't happen. Thank God I caught it before it did and severed the contract. So they don't want to come in with a brain that's too damaged. So, but they control us through abuse, physical harm, mental, emotional distress, and stuff like that. But the Phoenician's always been there. My sister and I used to write notes back and forth, and we'd get in trouble because if our notes got caught by the teacher, they couldn't read it, right? And I wouldn't tell them what it said. So I also implemented that while I was in the military. But I was my first year in, I think I was in AIT down in Monterey, and it was caught that I had some differences than others, and I was taken off base for studying. That's where they discovered I had Asperger's. And after AIT, I was sent to DC, where I formally met my great uncle. Only heard about him till that point, but he was a general under Bush at the time. He was one of the retired ones that were brought back. So he wore suits most of the time, not really uniforms unless they were going to the war room.
Yeah, now maybe you can explain that a little bit, because according to the official records, General Walter Bedell Smith died in 1961, but you met him much later. So can you explain how he was brought back?
I don't think they ever die, to be honest with you. I mean, how would you know? You could disappear and still live a whole life. So these guys are older than we think, and yeah, it's in our family. I did find out that we do have vampires in my bloodline. I'm not one. I'm guessing there was twins where one had the vampire gene and the other had the human gene. There's a connection there. So the Illuminati are illuminating, so they're mortals to an extent, but they do the adrenochrome. So did he really die, or did he just kind of go off grid and then come back? So I don't know. I just knew he's always been there, and he disappeared again in, I think it was 2011 or 2012, that they said he had died, that my grandma said he had died.
Well,
So
officially he dies in 1961, and so you met him.
right.
You met him when? I mean, what year did you meet him?
2002.
2002. So that would have been 40 years later, and so he would have been well over 100 at that time. So how did he look to you? Was he youthful?
He was old, but not fragile.
I see. So you think that he was, well, I mean, he was head of the CIA and a four-star general, so he probably would have been someone that could have had access to, whether age rejuvenation, adrenochrome, something like that, but something prolonged his life. And
Yes.
you met him.
I do. My grandma did the same thing. She was technically 103 when she passed away, and she really did pass away this time. But again, I put a soul contract on her, so she couldn't take me over in a physical form. I found these are generational in postings. So he may have lived through one of his grandsons, if that could have been how they did it, but they recognize each other as, like, for example, my grandma and him, they were old. She was 103 when she died, but she had a contract to live to be 150, and then they renew the contract through whatever it is that the elders of this world desire through people like myself. There's others who have these special genetics and stuff like that, and they have to control them. So that's the only thing I can think of. There's multiple ways to do it, but because I didn't sign an oath to go in to the Illuminati, I know bits and pieces of it, because I was like, no, I love humanity. I'm not participating in this reset. So I didn't get to see the full inside story. I just saw bits and pieces of it. Like, example for my grandma, she has CIA connections. She had royal connections. And to the, I guess, one of the princes over in the Middle East. I'm trying to think of what country, but I don't remember. And she just passed away in August. And that night she died, I felt like something swooshed past me, and I almost fell off my chair because I was typing up some legal documents. And I felt it. So I lit a bunch of candles because I knew she was trying to get me. And there's a contract that states they can inhabit other bloodline heirs. So had he died in that time, he may have jumped into a grandson, and the names wouldn't have changed. They're the same names, and they use the adrenochrome to stay alive longer. It doesn't mean they look good all the time. It doesn't always reverse aging. Other people's genes don't always work well with you. So if we have to talk about the gene splicing of the adrenochrome, a lot of these elites will use their own genetic children and grandchildren. So in my family, my grandma went after the men because all the men are dying, and then she would get a lot of money, and she would live longer. I mean, I don't know how he did it because I didn't live with him. The first time I met him was in 2002. But he's the same guy. Whether it's in the physical form of the older one or the new one, they don't always clone themselves. They will jump to an heir. And I was scheduled to be jumped into as well. So that's how I kind of figured it out.
So you meet your grand uncle in 2002, General Smith, and he is a factor in you being recruited into the military intelligence because of your abilities and into the majestic documents, and you're given very high security clearances. So, yeah, can you just maybe explain how that unfolded?
Yes, and again, there's lapse in memory. They do use us even in active duty. It's not just when you're a child. I've been to some of the underground bases. I don't have a whole lot of calculated memory of all of it. The ones that I remember is Base 7, which is a few hours outside of DC, and then 54, which is down in San Diego, LA area. It's a huge base underneath that whole thing. I think that's why they said LA was going to fall into the ocean, because I believe that there might be a huge ship underneath that. And then when the mud floods came in, they just kind of buried that ship underground, right? And so they have like this whole city underneath. And the military, that's why there's such a huge military presence at the very top of it. Again, I can't validate that, but I've seen some things both up in the air and on the ground. And I did do SEER training down there. So with his experience and his clearances, I was able to see a little bit more than others, but it was still very restricted consciously. I do remember going behind a door. It was a blue door, not a green door. And before I could enter it, they sprayed my eyes. So, and I don't know what that spray did. Does that make sense? Like I had to open my eye like that, and they would just a spritz right into my eye. And when we went in, I think it was a veil thing to where I would see what they wanted me to see instead of what was really in there. So it did look like a bunch of doctors, personnel, military, scientists, and then it was just a whole like underground base, but it could have been something different. The spritz changed what my peripheral vision was.
I see.
So there's been some things that went on. I just don't have memory of all of it because they do mind blank you at a lot of points.
Now you had a kind of conventional military career, like for 8 years, and you also worked in the classified programs. So with the conventional, in military intelligence, you say you were given a training that you had a specialty, a military occupation specialty, 35M for a military intelligence collector. So yeah, you want to explain how that unfolded?
Yes. So I scored high on my ASVAB, and I was recruited in as a human intelligence analyst, and because they needed a lot of intel at that time, because I went in after 9/11. But I was told they had such an influx of intel because, again, we were fighting intelligence and terrorists at the time. So um, I was told in the beginning that they were implementing special trainings and classifications. However, we would still go through the other stuff. But we couldn't talk about it and we couldn't let people know. The only ones that actually knew were either anywhere between a lieutenant to a captain. But it was difficult because I don't know if they were actually meant to be harder on us or make us kind of feel separated from the rest of the whole group, because a lot of times we're just, if you're in the special groups, it usually doesn't go up three. I know we have 6 manpower, but I was going into the special skills program, which has the certain program that I was going into. Um, I was going to be a single. I was like the soldier of one thing, like, because that's what the mentality was when I got recruited, army of one. That means one soldier can do a lot. But they had the units of 3 and they had the units of 6 from special forces and up. But special forces and special programs means people with special abilities. A lot of times now we're seeing that as the spectrum disorder. So we get put through rigorous trainings, and I did have to go through a bunch of rigorous trainings. I've been through SEER training. I did mention the different levels and what they do. I only made it to 4. I'm not fancy about being in the drown tanks. That's mostly Navy SEAL, but Special Forces does make you do that. I was in a program called Special Forces Area. That was more designed for females, not males. So there was a lot of controversy when I got out and was trying to, I guess, collaborate with special forces. They didn't believe or know that women were actually in special forces. That's how secret some of those programs were. I did get pinned by, no, I'm not excited to say it, but during the Bush era, what's her name? She was the
Condoleezza
secretary,
Rice.
Nancy Pelosi. There was 3 of us in the first wave of the girls training into the special forces. Nancy Pelosi pinned our uniforms with, all of our exceptions and stuff, and she was so evil about it. She said we were a disgrace to women and blah, 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 but she whispered it to us, like she would lean in and just all this horrible stuff, right? And there's just 3 of us. And it's like, that's a huge achievement for, out of 30 women, only 3 of us making it. But the men were the ones that got pinned by President Bush. So that was the only other time I saw him once, while I was with General Smith at the Capitol Hill. Um, but yeah, it was interesting. I do know that the programs were designed by CIA director, I believe his name was Sean Gates. So these were all GATE programs. And I know everybody talks about Bill Gates, but those two are not related. Sean Gates, he was not in as a CIA director for long, but he has a whole lot of programs that he put out there, and the military programs were implemented during 9/11. That was when they brought them all in, because everybody's volunteering, right? Our country supposedly got attacked by foreign enemies, and so we all jumped into the terrorist thing, and so we didn't care as long as we got to go after the enemy, right? But then you find out later that we were working for the enemy inside our own country.
Now, as far as you being trained in special forces and doing some SEAL training and so forth, and that there was a kind of like a unique women's program that's not well known or not known at all. Now, was this where you experienced MK Ultra? I mean, did they subject you to MK Ultra and then put you through the special forces training?
Yes. Yeah. It's the same as the mind control. It triggers when you're attacked. So instead of it just being a regular hand-to-hand combat training, they actually put us in groups to where your intent was to kill the other person. I mean, they wouldn't let us kill each other, but they wanted to make sure we blacked out so that they could see, like, the abilities of our fighting. We would be recorded. So I guess I don't know if they used a lot of this for like the video games nowadays, for the war video games, but we were recorded on our style of fighting. I didn't know at the time why, but we each have a style of fighting. I'm registered as a deadly weapon myself. I can kill somebody with a piece of paper. It's not easy, but you just shove it down their throat and then you throat punch them and it gets stuck because it absorbs the mucus and then they can't breathe because it blocks the breathing hole.
Okay,
So.
well, I'll make sure never have
You're like, don't put
paper
paper
stuff
around
down my
Mary.
throat.
Right. It's only if we black out. Like right now, I'm in it. I can't fight. But if somebody hits me, I can't stop myself. I'll black out. And the warning is always, I have a certain giggle. And that's what they watch for. Because I will giggle very narcissistically because that other personality is at the surface and it's over. It's like, I always tell innocent people you need to run, right? And then I black out. So I don't know how my style of fighting ever is. We don't get to see our own videos.
Okay, so it's kind of like an altar that gets triggered in extreme situations
Yes.
for you. Okay, so then as far as special forces training, competing with men, so a lot of the men in the special forces, I assume, they're not being MK Ultra. They're doing kind of normal SEAL training or Delta Force training or whatever. But then
A lot of them are Delta. Anything Delta Force has an alter ego.
okay, so they do it with the people going through SEALs and Delta Force,
Yes.
Army Delta Force also get MK Ultra. Okay, interesting. Okay, so you are a part of you get the Special Forces training, the MK Ultra, and that can just be activated. If there's a trigger word or something.
Right.
Okay, so
Or
yes.
if somebody physically attacks me.
Okay. All right. So, well, I guess that takes us to your book series because you've recently just written a 4-volume book series, and I have a copy here. I know you can't see it, but yeah, you want to tell us about your 4-volume book series about how to help people deprogram from this kind of MK Ultra that they may have been through.
Yeah, so I started off with the basics of just what MK Ultra was, the history of it, who were candidates, like certain blood types, bloodlines. Those are in the earlier 2 series. That one for the MK Alpha and MK Delta, that took me a little bit longer because it was personal, and even writing it triggers memories and feelings, and we fight the suppression part of it, if that makes sense. Like, it took a longer to write that one because I was literally in the middle of it, but I wanted to try to help people deprogram themselves, so I wrote it in a way that it wasn't going to hurt anybody. So for those that do read it, do come to a reality with it, it should keep them from blacking out and bringing their alter ego forward, because we were under the MK Ultra. You have handlers, and those handlers are the only ones that have like the secret passwords to turn you on and turn you off, to say, right? So my handler was killed or something, and they're from Norway. So I was programmed through Norwegian language. I don't know Norwegian language, but if I did get that phone call and they would speak a certain Norwegian phrase that had terrorists behind it, that was my on switch. Now, nobody could figure out what the off switch was, because if they killed the handler, they keep it in their mind of what it is. They don't write it down anywhere. So the handler coming behind him to try to unprogram me, it could have been devastating, because I have little kids and I could have seen these kids as monsters, right? And they didn't at that time in 2019, they were just trying to wake up people, right? So I was one of them, and I don't to this day know what my off switch is, or my wake up switch is, or the deprogramming switch is, or verbal command. But I put a bunch of them in that book. It's not going to be anything that you're going to recognize, because they use simple phrases like, little bunny foo foo could have been your trigger word, but in another language. The the MK Ultra people right now are programmed by China because they have the contract right now. So it literally goes to different countries. Germany has people over here, not just here, but in Australia, South Africa, other neighboring countries. I think the only country that is no longer infiltrated is Russia. So Putin was able to eliminate all of his sleeper cells.
I see.
So
Okay, so the book series is intended to help people who have been through the secret space programs or through any kind of MK Ultra to
yes,
deprogram, uh, and so they get in getting any of these books, they get to kind of like learn about the different historical processes and what's done, and maybe that helps them recognize patterns and commands and what has occurred in their life, which is helpful for deprogramming.
right, but safely because some people are assassin. Considered an assassin. So anything in the Delta programming is the level of assassin. Anything in the Alpha programming is more of like your basic soldiers, maybe Rangers. Rangers can be labeled as assassins too, but if they have a second MOS, that gives them that branch, and they're usually under some high-level general. So you can have multiple branches, you can have multiple um, MOSs, meaning jobs, but it has to be approved from somebody high. Anybody that was in the SOG Special Operations Group, that was run by the CIA. So I didn't know at the time that they were the ones that actually created SOG. We just thought it was an elite military thing. So we just jumped in like, oh, bragging rights. I'm in SOG. And so you think you're, cool, but then you figure it out you're not. And the CIA controls you. So, and yeah, they have, I think they set up a lot of the incidences that I experienced while in the military. So I think a lot of those were a setup. Like they had all these secret businesses and companies and who were being labeled as terrorists. So people like myself were sent into these buildings to get a certain file. But now I don't think it was on purpose, or not on purpose, like they were holding information on our country. I think it was to see if we could actually infiltrate those buildings unnoticed. So that way they could up their security. Or what did they need to fix? Because after we would do the assignment, we would be, just interrogated, not in a bad way, but like, oh, what did you do? What did you come across? How did you get in? They asked all the questions. It was like an after assignment briefing, and I always told them I walked through the front door, and it would drive the CIA crazy, and because I didn't like them, and I didn't want to talk to them, and I didn't want nothing to do with them, and I didn't know that they had created SOG in order to use military intelligence. So, but when I figured it out, I was like very uncompliant because I just don't like them. So it caught on that we were being used to secure their facilities from people like us. Does that make sense? So,
Okay, so you want to talk about some of the operations you did? I mean, you were trained to be an assassin. Can you give an example? Can you remember any assignment you did while you were in the military, while you were kind of like in the programs,
I did a
involved in?
couple assignments in Washington, D.C. at Capitol Hill. I was able to wear civilian clothes, suits mostly. I can't say the individuals' names, but I investigated a few senators that were labeled as, enemies of the state, and they were going to go public with information that would ruin America, or allow terrorists or something, or they were selling information to Russia or some other country at the time. But again, this is kind of where I found out we were actually I didn't take anybody out. I didn't poison anybody, just so everybody knows. I didn't do that because I'm not going to hurt innocent people, good or bad. If they didn't attack me, to me, I'm not God, so I can't take somebody's life unless they've attacked me first. So there was a senator in 2004, and you may be able to be lucky enough to find him. He did have a stroke, but it was after I came. He was going to go public with some information about the veterans and how they treat military veterans. There's actually a law that was brought in after the Civil War that militia and veterans are considered a threat to any government of the United States. So right there tells you it's just the London contract, not the America. Um, so every president gets to alter how the veterans are treated. So to me, this hit home because, again, I was a soldier at the time, and all the stuff that you see happening to veterans, homelessness, drugs, and mental health and stuff like that, it's not an accident. It's actually a law to keep the militarized forces lower than the government. So the government right now that I'm aware of is at 4.4 million in America, and our actual military is only like 1 or 2 million. So there's no balance between state military and people. We know there's more people, but not everybody can stand up and defend their constitutional rights. So I think it was after Nixon. Maybe it was Nixon. I can't exactly remember which president. He was the one that started the opiate pandemic with the Vietnam War, and that's where they tested everybody with the opiate use and the addiction, because before that there really wasn't a lot of military that had addiction issues. So, and I also started advocating, but I was meant to go after this senator who was supposedly going to go public with, damaging confidential information, but that's what it was. I've never opened a file till that point, and something pulled me to open that file, and I did read it, and it was devastating. So that's what lured me into their secret laws. There's a whole different judicial systems, like, for everything. It's not just, oh, your constitutional rights, or this, or your common law or judicial. There are black laws, there's blue laws, there's green laws, there's militarized laws, and it's like, wow. Now I found out there's an elder law that keeps us over our natural human living estates, and not the Black's Law Dictionary down here with the birth certificate nonsense. So that was eye-opening for me to see that it was literally the government wages war on veterans, and it's a silent war through medicine.
I see. Now, you were given some very high-level clearances while you were serving. So you want to explain how the clearances were assigned, and you were given Ultra Cosmic, and you want to talk about that, and even higher security clearances. I mean, what clearance does a normal, say, operative have, and how come you were given these very high clearances?
I do believe it has to do with bloodline family or word of mouth mostly, but because of General Smith, I was introduced to a lot of things because he was a Majestic, so his were high up there as well. I think the Cosmic, I didn't know about the Cosmic until I got those records, and when I did assignments, it was, you had to have a certain clearance in order to do these assignments. A lot of times when we go in, we don't know what we're going into, right? We've heard the stories about the Marines infiltrating certain bases in Texas and there was lizards everywhere, right? Well, they didn't know there was lizards behind those gates until the doors opened and they were in this, heated battle. But they had to have the clearance to go there. So with my uncle, he would just say, if I ever got questioned of why I was there, because you can get captured inside your own military, right? They can arrest you. And so he would tell me, if you ever got arrested, just say I have a Cosmic Majestic clearance. So that was the only one I knew that I had, but it was as need to know, is what I was told. But I think every time we had to do certain assignments that had to do with possibly seeing something that couldn't be explained, they had to make sure we had a clearance in order to do the job. And then we would just come back and it would be like the whole Men in Black thing to just, snap a photo or snap a light, and you just don't remember what happened, but you remember doing something. You got awards and honors, and there's a lot of missing pieces. The one clearance I did get to do was the giant in Area 54, And I think it was because I had the blood strand to get maybe close enough to him, because when we were in that room, there was a few other of us, it wasn't just me. They had these lines on the ground like tape to see how close certain people got, but they knew our blood type, right? Because the military knows everything about you. So, and your frequency and everything else. And I'm not saying I'm the only one that got close, but I got close enough that I didn't explode. I had blood running out of my nose. That's when they told us to back off. So I think it came depending on what they needed us to do. And I do know when I was in the space programs, I opened gates by touching one of those pillar towers, and then we would black out because they didn't want us to see who was coming or what was coming in and out. So I think the Omni clearance has to do with what it's above majestic. That's the clearance that's above majestic. So do they have that here with the regular people? I don't know. I do know if you can maybe have a perception to other beings, that's where the Omni clearance might come in. So the Omni Cosmic. But I was never explained why I had that. And I do have somebody that would like to challenge the military in my favor to settle those contracts. And there's another soldier that his wife, he was in the dimensional walkers as well. So, but he died, but his wife, they completely ghosted him too, as if he was never in any service. And his wife has been fighting for him ever since. So this advocate's excited that I have my record. So now, he could prove that we exist, right? So dimensional walkers, that could be part of the Omni clearance, is we can walk through dimensions. I don't remember walking through dimensions, but I have seen the dimensional doors.
Right. Okay. But if you did walk through those dimensional doors, then, as you said, when you got back from that assignment, your memory could have been wiped, or probably was wiped. So that seems to be pretty standard. That I've heard a lot of operatives say this, something similar, that when they get back from missions, there's an attempt to memory wipe them, and some remember, but most don't.
Right. I think it just depends on if you're part of the team or if you would be compromised. I was considered compromised because I wasn't into taking over America. I thought I was saving America, not, taking it over. So I was considered compromised.
Right.
And that's why I was ghosted and everything else.
Now you mentioned some of your colleagues were ghosted. So you want to explain that for people? What does it mean to be ghosted, and and what did that mean in your case when they tried to ghost you?
It considered that we're missing in action, prisoners of war. That's what the PALMIA and stands for. At first, so when I was captured in our country while on duty, I was arrested by Dahlonega in Georgia, and they found out I was an operative. It got leaked somehow. And so I was literally, the charges were felonies against myself, because at the time my name was Mary Jones. And so they said I wasn't Mary Jones, real name unknown, and they gave me 7 felonies so that way I could just disappear. And after the trial, the judge told me she would lock me up for 60 years. Without parole, and I would just rot in jail. And I'm just like, all right. Because I don't know
that? What kind of crime did you commit for that kind of sentence?
I didn't commit any crimes. They created the crimes. It was just identity fraud against myself, my name. But they put some kind of charge behind it, and they ran with it. So, and there was a black suit in there, so I'm guessing that was CIA. But at the time, I was involved in the court, and I'm like, you guys are going against all my constitutional rights and blah 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 blah. And I was like, I'm government property. You have to contact DC, and I was naming everybody, and they were like, they don't want you anymore. And I was like, what are you talking about? And the public defender was like, well, He's like, well, where do you think you're at? And I was like, well, I thought I was in the great state of Georgia, but obviously you guys floated off into the Atlantic and govern yourselves. So that was my first experience with corrupt law. And when I was being released, I was 86th out of the whole town of Dahlonega, and the probation officer made me sign a federal form. Now, why would a county have a federal form that states, I admit my name is not Mary Jones, like my real name is unknown? And I'm like, I can't sign that. I'm not going to sign that. And he's like, well, I got to lock you back up. And he's like, look, I don't know what kind of trouble you're in. He's like, but it would make sense to me you would have a better chance of fighting on the outside than you would in prison. And so I was like, okay, I signed it. And that's when I disappeared off of all record. I just don't exist. And that was the ghosting part. So I just disappeared on record. And I called, when I got out, I called my mom and I was like, how could you and grandma name me Mary Jones? That's like John Smith. So I literally had an identity crisis at that point. And my station commander found me homeless on the street 3 months later, took me in, helped me reacclimate, because that was like probably a load. But that's part of what I discovered that they're doing with veterans. But that was active duty. So that's how they ghosted me. My study was when Trump first got in 2016, they did an audit on what's happening to the ghost files. That went public on record, but they chopped it up as being, what was it, overseas in Iran and Afghanistan as help or something. Recruiting of the natives, the Iranians. But we only had like 60,000 Iranians throughout the whole war in Iraq and Afghanistan, of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And there was 138,000 missing ghost files that they couldn't account for. But those were people like me. We were in the ghost programs, because to be a ghost soldier, they take your file so that way when you're on an assignment, like when I was in DC, they couldn't find a record of me being an operative anywhere, right? Because if I was an operative, DC is not going to hire me. They're not going to bring me in as a secretary, as a temp, or anything like that, because then they know they're being watched. So we have to have civilian profiles. So they ghost your file, and then when they ghost you permanently, it looks something like an arrest record, or they just wipe you out and you get thrown off base. It can be pretty brutal.
I understand. So Mary Jones was the name you had when you were serving in the military, but then when you were ghosted at the end, all record of Mary Jones existing was expunged, and you were essentially told not to use that name, otherwise you'd be thrown in prison.
Yep, I'd be thrown back in federal prison because they pretty much closed that account, if you will.
Interesting.
So,
okay. Well, so now, I mean, obviously you go by Mary Beaver, and is that kind of like part of? Is that like just a new name you created?
Oh no! So what happened is I think after 4 or 5 years, I was able to come back to California because I was on probation out there. They weren't going to let me out of their sight, and I was considered high risk. Like, it wasn't just, oh, you catched a few identity felonies. I was like, they labeled me as the most dangerous person in Georgia. I'm like, what? I mean, I know that I am, but in a civilian sense, not really. So when I was finally able to come back to California, I ended up getting married, but in this county, and this is where it would be considered you're captured a prisoner of war, right? Is I couldn't come out of this county, because if I had my driver's license that said Mary Jones and I drove outside of this county, they don't have record of me outside of the county. They don't have pictures. Because I did go into the DMV to renew my license or get a new one because I had lost the other one. And the gal was looking at the computer and looking at me and looking at the computer for like 20 minutes. And I was just sitting there staring off into space, da 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 da. And so when I looked what she was doing, I was like, so there was an incident in Georgia? And she's like, mm-hmm. And so I told her what had happened, and she's like, well, I'm glad you explained that, because I was about to push a button to call law enforcement and have you arrested. She's like, but I was looking at all your photos all the way back to when you were 17, and you look the same. So she's like, "You're the person that I see you as," and she's like, "I'm confused at why they're this." And she showed me it was a red thing that said, "Arrest this person, identity fraud." Like it was a thing. So she ended up renewing my license, and then, but we know people that work for the state mostly are handlers, right? So she was like, "I don't recommend you leaving the county because outside of the county I live in, they don't have access to the photos. So if I got pulled over, driving in the city somewhere, they could arrest me for having Jones on my license." So Mary Beaver, I did end up getting married, and I just kept his last name after we got divorced. So I just created a whole new person to be able to be in society.
I
And
see.
because I have the records all here in the county I grew up in, they can find me here, but anywhere else, no. When I had to get my birth certificates, they're down in Sacramento. It took 2.5 hours. And the lady kept calling me up, and she even mentioned, she's like, "So there's a Mary Jones here?" And I was like, "Let's just leave Mary Jones alone." My birth certificate says this, I say this, and we'll just leave that alone. She had to call the state. The state had to call federal to release my information just to get birth certificates.
Okay. So now you've left the military. You're living a private life. You got married. You had children. Were you still doing assignments, or I mean, in terms of your knowledge of Phoenician and some of the experiences you had with different groups? I mean, is that something that you continued to encounter over your civilian life?
No, because I was considered compromised. I was an asset that couldn't be killed. So I think they made me somebody else's mission. Usually, when so in my younger military career, I was considered unseasoned, and other military people, if we had to go after them, I can't confirm nor deny that we did. But if we had to go after them, they were seasoned. They were older, sergeant first class, and mostly sergeant first classes, which was E7. Uh, they were labeled as terrorists, so they would send an unseasoned person like myself, and they became our target, right? So we would get into an altercation, and obviously the fact I'm still here, 9 times out of 10 those guys aren't. So that is what happened to me. Is I had unseasoned operatives coming after me as a seasoned operative because they were trying to find a way to kill me. But my uncle, I don't know if he had some kind of last minute heartfelt whatever, but he promised he would give me my file before he died. I never got it. But he hid it. I don't know where he hid it because they keep sending lower level operatives after me, and it's not even quite a challenge. Not that I'm like super Hulk or anything, but when you black out, it's a thing. I've even had to tell officers who've pulled guns on me before, like, I have to look away, put my head down, and put my hand up and say, "Please put that down. I have advanced military experience. If I black out, there's a chance you're not going home today." And they will, because a lot of them in my area are veterans. So they put their guns down, and I tell them, I cooperate. Please don't make me black out. I really want you to go home to your families. So
I see.
that is a real thing.
Well, I mean, there's something about Space Arks, that you have some information about Space Arks. So,
Oh,
what
yes.
do you know of those?
Well, I know quite a bit. I know from what I know, there's 75 active arcs that the government has located. A few of them they can't get to because they're in the ocean. Um, kind of like the one that JP was seeing, but there's bigger ones around. I do believe there might be one or a few up in Greenland or Iceland. That's why they're making a big deal out of those. But I had this download. Now, I've been on an ascension process. You and I haven't talked in a while, but I was approached by some Templar priests. They're worldly priests. They're a couple 100 years old. We know that when we see war down here, that it's usually that the elites and the secret societies and the kings, they're all fighting up in their world, and we don't see it unless they're losing. So then they start using us to fight their fights. So during all this ascension process, I've been doing what's called the master exit. I realized it's part of the book of life, which is mentioned in the Bible. But I talk about that on other things if people want to seek my stuff out. So I've been on this adventure to find things. So I've unlocked a lot of memory, and I had this download, I would say a couple months ago. And I was in the spirit realm. I was raised by a shaman who showed me how to get in the spirit realm safely with my two guides. And I'll always be at a fireplace looking over a valley at night with trees, like, forest trees. And that's where I tell people to meet me, because the spirit realm can be tricky. And I believe Noah, he presented himself as Noah. And I am actually connected to the bloodline of Noah. I'm going to come out with that book, because there's some interesting stories and truths behind all that missing information. So I was at this fireplace with Noah, and he told me, he was like, you have the knowledge through the DNA of the arks. And he said after the flood receded, his God, that we know now is not the good God, and he knew it, but he wanted to keep his family alive and his descendants. The only one he told was Seth, was that he sabotaged the arks so they couldn't fly, because the God over this world right now wanted to keep humanity trapped. And the only way we could escape is through the arks. So part of his contract was to disable the functionality of the flight of the arks. So he had what was called, I would say, a tetrahedron triangular mathematical celestial coding, which is also known as the source coding. And this God gave him the virus to put in these arks. So the ark that he had could excuse me, communicate. Look, they're going to go after my throat chakra. Could communicate with the other arks. And so he loaded this, whether it was a boat or a ship, it just depends. We know, you and I both know, that they were ships. But he loaded in the virus that affected all the arcs that are starting to activate. So the coding got scrambled. So even though the military and all those other people, they can't get them to fly high enough to get out, because that God doesn't want us to be released. So he had Noah disable it. Now, in this I had, Noah gave me the code to reverse it, the source code to reverse it. So I hope you can see this. So I did a pre-patent. Can you see that?
I can, but it's in reverse. I don't know.
It's in reverse. So this says the Office of Mary Beaver. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess you would have to reverse the image from. But if you read the
Put it
cover,
upside
that'll
down.
help.
Okay,
Oh,
so
no,
the front cover. Sorry.
Yeah, just read the front cover. That's okay.
So it says Office of Mary Beaver, Federal and International Security Department. So on this adventure of what I've been doing, I've created a governance office, kind of like what Nikolai Tesla did. That's how he had so many patents the government couldn't get to until he died. He did all these pre-patents. So let me see. Can you see that? Let's see.
Yes, I can see that image.
Okay, so that image was something part of my downloads, and the mathematical sequence that is part of the arcs. So the triangle that we see with the Illuminati is not evil. It's actually, they want you to think it's evil so you guys don't go after its healing powers, just like everything else. The all-seeing eyes, all that stuff. Now, I cannot show the codes because, this will obviously be public, so we don't want to give them the codes on how to fix the arcs and fly out and leave us all behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. But so I did it in pre-patent form. I'm trying to see if there's a page I can show that has a lot of interesting information in it, but without giving out the codes. The codes are important. Well, this one's not going to alter anything. So that's weird if I have to put it upside down. So do you see that?
Yeah, it looks like it's mirror imaged, but
Is it?
that's what I'm seeing.
Okay. Well, that's fascinating. Maybe you're not supposed to see it.
Maybe not.
Let's see. So it's the Imperial. This one is for the Imperial Arc, triune compass architecture. So these are all codes that go into that particular arc. Now, again, there's 75, so I now have 74 more to write in order to put the source codes back into the arcs. And I didn't know this was going to happen, obviously. So it was interesting to have that download with, I think he's my 19th or something great-grandfather.
Very interesting. So
Maybe further
75
back.
arcs there exist, and you got the source coding for operating those.
All of them. Yeah.
That's very interesting. So that source coding, how would that now, as far as people who have traveled to the arcs are concerned, they say that the arcs are controlled by a crystal which hosts a organic consciousness, and so would this source coding be something that organic consciousness or the crystal need to be able to fly the arc wherever?
I think with DNA, because if, and again, we know that Noah wasn't the only ark. There was other arks. His wives. So in my lineages, it shows 2 wives. They were sisters, and these are unbroken bloodlines that are cited by churches and temples, ancient ones. Like they're all recorded somewhere. And I have all these recordings now. And when you learn their real name, you can get the real story, not the story they give us. It's just like if I just went by Adona of Soul, as you know, my I guess the esoteric part of me, people may not know the Mary Beaver. So I associate both with the same person. But the history that they give us, like when we say, oh, Noah during the flood, he's got like this really long name, because remember, they always talk about their tribes, who they came from, the house of Seth, you know, Adam, and then Elohim, right? So back then they had to identify their actual bloodline. So Noah and Adam, I do believe, were still alive together. And I actually know the year of the flood. It was in 2012 BC. So that's why 2012, and it showed the world being flooded. So they're telling us our history, and we're just thinking, oh, 2012, our world's going to flood. Well, that was when it flooded for Noah. That was the year that the world flooded. It was 2012 BC. But you can find it if you get their real names. That's why I wanted to put my lineage out there, so I could bring up what their real names were, where they were born, where they died, the locations of the cities, you know, where they were as opposed to now, and it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, that is, it is fascinating. Well, I'd love to be able to kind of like dive into that a little bit more, but it's been an hour, and I know we need to finish up. So where do people go? I mean, is there an online, do you have a website if they wanted to get these booklets or they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so Adona of Soul is online. I can send you the link. It's adonaofsoul.us. So ADONNA of OF, and then soul is SOL.us. And then I also have a Facebook page, so you can either, don't go to the Mary Beaver one. I don't really post anything on there because the Illuminati watch me there. But I do have an Adona of Soul Facebook. So it's if you find my webpage, you can click on the Facebook, and then I do kind of like open conversations in Telegram every Saturday. So people can ask questions there and talk to me for like 2 to 3 hours on Saturdays.
Okay.
So,
Perfect. All right. So I'll put that website in the description so people can find it and get in touch with
okay.
you through Telegram and communicate. So I want to thank you, Mary, for coming and giving us an update on what's happening with you and all of your experiences.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you're doing well, and it's great to see you again.
Thank you, Mary. Okay. Aloha.